In this recording, we're going to skin our mesh to our bones. In the last video, we had set keyframes for extreme poses for our limbs, our spine, and our fingers. So now what we need to do is skin our mesh to our bones. Now it's very important to understand the difference between your control rig and your skeleton, because you do not want to skin your mesh to your control rig. Your control rig was simply to set key frames so your control rig can drive your skeleton's position, but the skin actually must be adhered to the skeleton itself. So that said, in a previous video I described the difference between your control rig icons here and the skeleton icon. What we're going to do is turn off the visibility of your control rig now and turn on the visibility of your skeleton. Again, these first two icons in your character control panel here are off. They're toggled off. Your skeleton is toggled on. So now you should be able to drag select over your pelvic bone and it will select your entire bone system. If you did what I did initially, which is select or click on your skin, the order of selection dictates that you're going to select your skin. But if you start out in your viewport, click and drag, the order of selection will allow you to select the skeleton first and not select your skin. So when you've got your pelvic bone, your root node selected, go ahead and hold your shift key down and click on your skin so you have both selected. Over here in the outliner you can also select one and then the other. Alright, select. Now we're going to come up here to the skin drop down. That very top option, hold bind skin, go ahead and click on the options box and you will see you've got a lot of selections here. What we're going to do first, best practice in Maya, is simply to go up to the edit and reset your settings. Now the one that I want to point out to you today is the max influence. Max influence is set to 5 at default, and what that means is that each vert on your mesh, if we select the vert only, you see that each one of these dots representing an intersection on your polygonal mesh, each of those is then looking for the 5 surrounding joints on your skeleton. So for example, a vert in the rib cage will look for those 5 surrounding joints, and it may be the elbow and it may be the wrist, depending on how close in proximity those are. And of course that has to do with the bind method of closest distance. If you click on closest distance, the arrow to the right hand side, you'll also see you have other options such as closest in hierarchy. Now if you select closest in hierarchy, what that's going to do is allow your mesh, your verts on your mesh, to look at the joints that are closest in your hierarchy rather than proximity. Alright, so I invite you to select on each of these, try each of these selections to see what works best for you. I'm going to go with the default option so I can guide you through that. And once you have the edit reset settings selected, so you're on the default selections, go ahead and bind skin. Oops, I need to have my skin selected as well as my skeleton, and then bind skin. Alright, now what that does is it binds your mesh, your animation proxy model, to the bone system. Now what we can do is scrub our animation time slider, and you should be able to see your mesh following along with your bones. Okay. Now, excuse me, I notice that I do have a keyframe set on my bone system. So what I'm going to do, and you can do this too, just double check your bone structure, is right click and delete that that bone animation. So now you can see that you have no red animation keyframe set for your skeleton system. You can go ahead and reveal your control rig if you like, and then adjust your ROM, your range of motion animation, as needed. Just make sure that you're making your adjustments on the control rig, your IK and your FK components, and not your skeleton. Alright, let's go ahead and check in. Now, as we scrub through our animation, we can see that very easily. This is one of the locations that we often have difficulty with, is the inside of the thighs. As one of your legs is moving, the animated leg, you'll notice that the inside of the thigh that is a weight-bearing leg is also moving, and that simply means that your vertices on that weight-bearing leg are grabbing your joints on the other leg, because those are within those 5 closest proximity joints. Now these are the instances where we want to correct with weight painting. That's adjusting the percentage of weight on the vertices so that they do not look at those joints on the opposite leg as they're moving. And this is why we have our ROM animation. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do is turn on my skeleton, turn off the visibility of my control rig, and you're just turning on and off the visibility. You're not changing anything about your character and source setup. Those remain the same. If you take your control rig off, you won't have your animation driving your skeleton. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and scrub to this location where that pull on that weight-bearing leg is the worst, and I can go ahead and begin there. Now, to paint the weight of your skin, to adjust these percentages, you're going to select your skin, then you're going to go to the skin drop-down category of tools under weight maps. That very top option, paint skin weights, has an options box, so go ahead and bring that up. And what that does is it reveals the interface for the tool set for adjusting your mesh. You can also see that the display of your character is changed according to the settings in your tool settings inside your weight painting tool. Here I have use color ramp on, but you'll notice if you reset your tools, it'll reset down to your black and white default settings. If you like and prefer the gradient, it gives you a little bit more information visually. You can go down, navigate down where you see gradient rollout. You can go ahead and open that up and simply check on the box. Then you're able to see a broader color range here for the actual weights of your vertices. Now it all has to do with which bone I have selected, which joint I have selected in the interface. So you'll be painting, depending on the selection you have. Right here I have the right upper leg selected. you're going to be painting weight toward this particular bone. So it's this bone that I have selected. It's this leg that I want to make sure is looking at these joints specifically and not these joints on the opposite leg. So what I'm going to do is initially I'm going to dial down the settings on the opacity and value, and I can adjust my brush size as well by holding my B key down on my keyboard. Notice that the cursor changes. Go ahead and bring that in a little bit closer. B key down, my cursor changes. Once it does, I'm hovering over my model and not out here in the interface. Just go ahead and click and drag and you can see the diameter circle for the brush size. I'm going to go quite large so you can see a dramatic difference. But normally what I do is go with an average and then dial my weight down, so I'm just applying smaller increments of weight. Now you also have your paint operation, replace, add, smooth are the ones that I normally use for this. But just to show you very quickly as we begin, what's going to happen is with the current settings, I'm actually causing the problem to get worse. If you take a look, it's going from the gold to the yellow, which is less weight. So it's looking more at these other joints. So what I want to do is dial up the influence of opacity and value and go at it again. And one more time. And all right, so now these settings are giving me more influence on my model. And my model is a very low poly model. Excuse me. So it's going to, you're going to see a lot more radical change on a higher poly model as you work over. What I want to try to avoid is going all the way to white. White is 100% influence on my vert. With an organic model, you want to share weight. You could possibly do that. The only place where I would probably be okay with painting out white on my mesh is the skull, because the skull has a very thin layer of muscle tissue and skin on top of that. It doesn't move visually. It doesn't move very much. All right, so that is how you would paint the weight on your character. Very few settings here, and once you get used to those, play around so you know how these tools work for you. Flood is simply that. It's flood weighting your entire mesh to the selected bone, so your entire mesh will go white. And of course you can undo any settings that you don't like. But as you work down, again, you want to work from the core out on your model to get the best result. You're going to have a little bit better time painting a model that has more vertices on it. You get a stronger result. But you notice right away that my weight-bearing leg is no longer pulling as much when I lift the opposite leg. And again, I'm scrubbing on my time slider back and forth just to make sure that the muscle tissue, as I paint the weight, is actually taking on the form that's best suited for that particular pose. Alright, so I'm going to come on down and do the lower part of the leg. I'm going to go ahead and continue to paint that weight out toward the joints, and that creates a better shape for this leg as I work my way around the model. Now if you find you have a pretty large change from one portion of the mesh to another, you can use the smooth tool. Now that's not going to work for this particular model because these are in fact two mesh pieces, so I'll have to weight those individually. For an example, I can come down here to smooth, and what that does is it smooths out the weight from one vert to the other. Makes it a little bit smoother result, so it deforms more like an organic model. Now you can see as I pull that leg up, it's not stretching with it. You just want to work through the model. And then, of course, you have mirroring tools for your mesh as well. And once you get all of your weights painted on one side of your model, you can use your weight mirroring tool. Again, under the skin drop down, mirror skin weights, get your options box up there, and mirror those weights over to the other side. Now, that tool set is not exact, and so you will still need to go in and touch up certain areas, but it will get you there to the end result more quickly than without the automated tool set. All right, join me for the next video as we wrap up the rigging for this model and export this for use in motion capture.